Kara Anderson didn't mean to ruin her Tuesday morning by walking up the wrong driveway, but that's exactly what she did, carrying a package that didn't belong to the man who opened the door. Hi, she said, blinking at the tall, shirtless stranger with damp hair and a towel around his neck. This is for Mrs. Linda Holloway. She held out the medium-sized box like it might explode. The man raised an eyebrow, his green eyes scanning her face first, then the box. You're 2 doors down. Oh, crap, Kara let out a sigh, half laughing, half mortified. I'm so sorry. I'm just helping out my cousin's delivery business this week. I'm not a professional or anything. That's obvious, he said, but his voice wasn't rude. It was amused, warm even. Kara squinted at him. You're enjoying this, aren't you? A little, he admitted, wiping his face with the towel. But I'll forgive you if you tell me your name, she hesitated. Kara Anderson. Cameron Foster, he replied, extending a hand. She shook it, and for a second her brain short-circuited. His grip was steady, his skin warm, and there was something about that name. Nice to meet you, Kara. Even if you are terrible at directions. I'll make it up to you, she said before thinking. Next time I'll get your package right, he chuckled. Looking forward to it. Kara turned red and backed away, her sneakers crunching on the gravel. She hurried down the driveway, muttering to herself, "Smooth, Kara. Real smooth." As she delivered the package to the actual Linda Holloway, Kara couldn't stop thinking about the man with the towel and the smile, and she definitely didn't expect to see him again, but she did. 2 days later, her cousin asked her to do one last round of deliveries. She agreed mostly because it paid cash, and she was still between jobs. Halfway through her route, she glanced at the next address and froze. Cameron Foster. She swallowed and looked up. The house was sleek, modern, and massive. Way too nice for this town. She hadn't noticed the first time just how expensive it looked, probably because she'd been too busy staring at the guy. She stepped out of the van, holding a small box, and walked up to the door, feeling weirdly nervous. Before she could even knock, it swung open. You again, Cameron said, grinning. You ordered something this time, she pointed out. I did, he said, but I wasn't expecting you to be the one delivering it. Yeah, well, don't get used to it. Today's my last day helping out. Shame, he said, leaning against the doorframe. He was in a plain white t-shirt and jeans, but somehow still looked like he walked out of a magazine. You want a water or something before you go? I'm working. Are you? He asked, tilting his head. Because it looks like you're standing on my porch avoiding eye contact, Kara laughed. I'm not avoiding, okay, maybe a little. I don't bite, he said. Come on, 5 minutes. She hesitated, then stepped inside. The place was ridiculous. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek furniture, and a view of the lake behind the house that made her jaw drop. You live here? She asked. Yup. Alone. Is that a question or a concern? Kara rolled her eyes. You're way too comfortable with strangers. You're not a stranger anymore. He turned to face her. You're Kara, the girl who delivers wrong packages and doesn't drink water when offered. She narrowed her eyes. You're cocky. Confident, he corrected. Same thing. He grinned again, and she hated how much she liked the way it made her stomach flip. So what do you actually do? She asked. Besides collect deliveries and charm unsuspecting women, I work in tech, he said. Sold a company 2 years ago. Kara blinked. Like. Tech, he nodded. So you're what? Some kind of millionaire, he shrugged. Something like that. Kara's mouth went dry. Guess that explains the house. And the car, he added, motioning toward the sleek black sports car in the garage. Wow, she muttered. I thought you were just a hot guy with good taste in towels. Appreciate the honesty, he said, laughing. She shook her head, stepping back. Okay, I've got to go. Real deliveries to make. He walked her to the door. Will I see you again? Probably not. I'm done after today. Then let me take you out, she blinked. What? Dinner tomorrow, he said. You can wear something other than a delivery uniform. Kara stared at him. You don't even know me. I know enough to want to, he said simply. For a second, she forgot how to speak. Then she heard herself say, okay, one dinner, he smiled. I'll pick you up at 7. As Kara walked back to the van, she glanced over her shoulder. Cameron was still standing at the door, watching her like she was the most interesting thing he'd seen all week. She got into the driver's seat, closed the door, and let out a breath. What the hell just happened? The next evening, Kara stood in front of her tiny bathroom mirror, adjusting the straps of her dress. It wasn't fancy, but it was the nicest thing she owned. Her heart thudded in her chest as she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, Cameron was standing there in a dark button-up shirt and slacks, holding a single white rose. "For you," he said. Kara blinked. "You're really going all in, huh? I told you. One dinner." "I planned to impress." He helped her into the passenger seat of his car, and they drove across town to a place she'd only ever seen in magazines: a rooftop restaurant with string lights, a live pianist, and views that looked straight out of a movie. "Wow," she whispered as the waiter guided them to a private table near the edge. "I figured you deserved more than fast food," Cameron said, pulling out her chair. Over dinner, the banter returned. They talked about everything: her struggles finding a job after getting laid off, his complicated relationship with money, how he hated people pretending around him just because of who he was. Kara didn't pretend. She asked questions. She challenged him. She made him laugh until he leaned back and clutched his stomach. At one point he looked at her and said, "You're not what I expected." "Disappointed?" she teased. "Not even close." By the time dessert came, Kara felt like her world was tilting. She hadn't planned on this, on him. On the way he looked at her like she mattered. As he walked her to her door later, she turned to him. "This was different," he offered. "Yeah." He stepped closer. "Can I kiss you?" Kara hesitated for only a second before nodding. When his lips met hers, it was soft and slow and felt like the start of something she didn't understand yet but wanted to. When he finally pulled back, he whispered, "I'm really glad you delivered that package to the wrong house." Kara smiled, her heart pounding. She had no idea where this was going, but for the first time in a long time she wanted to find out. Kara didn't sleep that night. Not because of nerves or overthinking, but because her mind refused to stop replaying one moment: the way Cameron had looked at her just before he kissed her, like she was something rare, something he hadn't expected to find but now couldn't look away from. By morning, she had convinced herself it was a one-time thing, a beautiful, absurd deviation from her reality. Broke in between jobs and still eating peanut butter toast for breakfast. Men like Cameron Foster didn't date women like her. They dated heiresses, models, the kind of women who wore heels in airports and owned more than one handbag that cost over $50. So when she opened her front door that Saturday afternoon and found him standing there in sunglasses and a navy jacket, holding 2 coffees, her mouth parted in stunned silence. "I thought we could take a walk," Cameron said, like this was the most natural thing in the world. "Unless you've got plans." Kara glanced down at her oversized sweater and leggings. "I was going to reorganize my spice rack." "Thrilling," he said, handing her one of the cups. "But I'm here to kidnap you for something slightly less domestic." "You game?" She took the coffee without breaking eye contact. "Where are we walking?" "Somewhere with a view." And a lot fewer spice jars. They ended up at the cliffs just outside of town, where the wind was sharp enough to tug at her hair, and the ocean below looked like a churning sheet of blue glass. Kara had lived in the area her entire life and never once thought to come here. Cameron stood beside her on the overlook, hands in his pockets, watching the waves. "I used to come here in college," he said, "when I needed to think. You went to school around here." "Not exactly." He glanced at her. "But I liked being anonymous back then. No one cared who I was or what I was building. I could just exist." Kara kept her eyes on the horizon. "You miss that? Some days more than others." He turned toward her. "People treat you differently when they think your name means something." She sipped her coffee, letting the wind whip around them. "You're lucky. Most people spend their lives begging to be taken seriously." "I don't want to be taken seriously," he said. "I just want to be seen honestly." He paused, then added, "That's why I like being around you." Kara blinked at him, her throat tight. "You barely know me." "I know how you look when you're trying not to laugh," he said, and how you shift on your feet when you're nervous, and that you keep everything you're feeling about to an inch below the surface, like you're afraid it'll spill out if you let go for even a second. She didn't know what to do with that. No one had ever seen her that clearly before. It made her heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. Cameron nudged her shoulder gently. "Come on, I want to show you something." They walked along the trail until they reached a narrow staircase carved into the rock. At the bottom, hidden between cliffs, was a small cove with a pebbled beach. The sun hit it just right, casting golden light across the stones. Kara crouched, running her fingers through the smooth, cool rocks. "How did you find this place?" "I used to come down here to sketch." He picked up a flat stone and tossed it across the surface. It skipped twice before vanishing. "Back when I thought I'd be an architect," she looked up. "Seriously, my parents thought it was a waste of time," he shrugged. "So I taught myself how to code instead." Kara tilted her head. "You regret it." "I regret letting them decide for me." Kara was quiet, then said, "My mom used to paint. She stopped after my dad walked out, said it was indulgent. You still have her art." "One canvas," Kara said. She tossed the rest. There was a beat of silence before Cameron said, "You're not what I expected either." Kara gave him a dry look. "What did you expect? A girl with 3 roommates and expired milk in her fridge," he grinned. "I was going to say someone who pretends. You don't." "It's refreshing." She picked up a stone and threw it into the water. It sank with a heavy splash. Later, as they climbed back up the stairs, Kara asked, "Why me?" Cameron didn't look at her as he said, "Because you don't want anything from me. And somehow that makes me want to give you everything." She didn't respond, couldn't. The words sank into her chest like an anchor. When they returned to her apartment, he walked her to the door again. But this time he didn't kiss her. He just said, "I'd like to see you tomorrow." Kara nodded. "Okay." That night, she lay awake again. But this time, it wasn't confusion or disbelief that kept her up. It was the terrifying possibility that this thing between them might be real, and the even more terrifying possibility that it wouldn't last. The next day, he didn't show up empty-handed. He brought a framed sketch of the cove. She stared at it, stunned. "You drew this last night," he said. "Thought you should have something worth keeping." Kara took the frame with both hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you always do things like this?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've never wanted to." She set the frame on her bookshelf like it belonged there, like it always had. Then she turned back to him and said, "I have something to show you too." She pulled a dusty canvas from the back of her closet. It was her mother's last painting, a soft, abstract swirl of color that looked like movement and silence all at once. Cameron studied it quietly. "It's beautiful." She hated it, Kara said. Said it looked unfinished. "It looks alive," he said, "like it's waiting for something." Kara didn't realize she was holding her breath until she let it out. She turned to him, suddenly unsure. "This is moving fast." "I know," he said. "But I don't want to slow down. You don't even know what you're getting into." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Then let me find out." She stared at him, her heart thundering, and for the first time she didn't pull away. Kara stood barefoot on the cold tile floor of her kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of tea on the counter. The frame Cameron had given her now rested on a small shelf above the sink, catching the late afternoon light. She'd told herself she wouldn't get attached, not to him, not to the gifts or the moments, but his presence had begun to settle inside her like he belonged there. And that terrified her. When her phone rang, she didn't rush to answer. But when she saw the name, she picked up. "Hey," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. "I'm sending a car," Cameron said without preamble. "Be ready in 30 minutes. A car, I'll explain when you get here. Just wear something warm, trust me." He didn't wait for her to ask questions. The call ended, and 35 minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of her apartment. The driver greeted her by name, opened the door, and said nothing else. The ride was silent, the city blurring past until they turned onto a private road flanked by tall trees. Eventually, the car stopped in front of a wrought iron gate that opened slowly, revealing a long drive lit by golden lanterns. Kara stepped out, her breath forming clouds in the chilly air. She looked up at the sprawling estate ahead, stone walls, ivy-covered terraces, and dozens of glowing windows. But the man waiting for her at the top of the steps drew her attention first. "You live here?" she asked as she approached, her boots crunching on the gravel. "No," Cameron replied. "This was where I grew up." She paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Why bring me here?" He motioned for her to follow. "Because if I want to keep seeing you, you deserve to know what that means." Inside, the house was quiet but far from empty. There were signs of life: a coat thrown over a chair, a chessboard mid-game on a side table, a vase of fresh lilies near the staircase. He led her through the grand hall and into a room lined with bookshelves and tall windows that overlooked the back gardens. "My mother still lives here," he said, settling into a chair. "She's visiting friends in Italy this week. I come here sometimes when I need to remember why I left." Kara sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. "You said your parents didn't support your architecture dream." "They didn't support anything that didn't come with a pedigree or a board seat," he said, his voice calm but clipped. "My father passed 4 years ago, stroke. I hadn't spoken to him in almost 2 years at that point." "I'm sorry," Kara said softly. "I'm not," he replied, then looked at her. "But I am sorry for dragging you into something that might get complicated," she frowned. "What do you mean?" He stood and walked to the bookshelf, pulling down a photo in a silver frame. It was a family portrait: Cameron, younger and leaner, standing beside an older man in a tuxedo and a woman with sharp eyes and a frozen smile. "That man built empires by breaking people. My last name opens doors, but it also invites assumptions. Some of them aren't wrong." Kara leaned forward. "Are you worried I'll run?" "I'm worried you'll think I'm trying to buy your attention." She stood too, crossing the room. "You brought me to a private cove. You gave me a drawing you made yourself. You're not trying to buy me, Cameron. You're letting me see you." His jaw tensed, but he didn't look away. "I've watched people change the second they figure out who I am. You didn't." "Maybe it's because I still can't believe this is real," she admitted. "I've spent the last 2 years trying not to drown, then you show up with your tailored shirts and your perfect smiles and this." He stepped closer. "Then let me prove it's real." Before she could answer, a voice echoed from the hallway. "I thought I heard voices." Kara turned sharply. A woman stood at the doorway, elegant and composed, wearing a silk blouse and a look of polite confusion. "Mother," Cameron said, his tone neutral. "You weren't supposed to be home until Friday." "The gallery opening was dull," she said, her gaze drifting to Kara. "And who is this?" Cameron didn't hesitate. "This is Kara Anderson. She's important to me." Kara's heart thudded, the woman's eyes sharpened, but her tone stayed smooth. "Is she with the agency?" "She's not working for me," Cameron said. "She's with me." There was a beat of silence. Then the woman's smile reappeared, brittle at the edges. "Charming." Kara extended a hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Foster." "You too, dear," she said, taking it briefly. "Though I'm surprised Cameron didn't mention we'd be entertaining." Cameron stepped in. "We'll be leaving shortly." "You're welcome to stay for dinner," she said, her voice like polished marble. "I'm sure the staff can accommodate a last-minute guest." "I think we'll pass," Cameron said. "Come on, Kara." Once they were back in the car, Kara pressed her fingers to her temple. "That was intense." "She's rarely anything else," he said. "I didn't plan for you to meet her like that." Kara looked out the window as the gates reopened. "I'm not intimidated by her, but I get why you left." He reached over and gently took her hand. "I want you to see all of it. Not just the parts I've curated." She turned to him. "Then you have to let me show you mine too. Name the time and place." "Tomorrow," she said, "but it's going to be loud and messy, and probably involve microwaved leftovers." He smiled, but not with amusement this time, with something quieter. "Something real. I'm looking forward to it." Kara barely had time to kick her shoes off before her younger brother burst through the kitchen door with a grocery bag dangling from one arm and a basketball spinning on the other. "Do not tell me you forgot the eggs again," she said, catching the bag before it hit the floor. I got the stupid eggs, Mason groaned, dropping the ball into the corner. Also grabbed that frozen pizza you like, the one with the fancy mushrooms. She lifted a brow. You mean portobolos? Whatever, they're fungus, still gross. Kara rolled her eyes and turned toward the stove, flicking it on. Cameron's coming by later. Mason froze, then leaned against the counter. You mean Mr. Rich guy who showed up in that car I thought belonged to a movie villain. That's the one. He crossed his arms. You sure about this? No, she admitted, but I want to be. Mason didn't say anything for a second, then he reached over and pulled open the freezer. Fine. But if he breaks your heart, I'm keying his car. You won't even touch a salad bar and you think you'll survive vandalism charges, he grinned. I'm a mystery. An hour later, Kara was wiping her hands on a dish towel when headlights swept across the small living room window. Mason muttered something about interrogation mode and disappeared down the hall. Cameron stepped inside the apartment with a quiet smile and a bottle of wine in hand, not expensive or flashy, but something modest with a faded label. He looked around the space, taking in the mismatched furniture, the cracked lamp Kara had glued back together twice, and the framed photos on the wall. This feels more like home than anywhere I've been in years, he said. She handed him a glass. You haven't even seen the bathroom, he raised his glass. To uneven tiles and honest spaces. They clinked, and Kara sat on the couch beside him, folding her legs beneath her. You're not uncomfortable. Only thing uncomfortable is how hard I'm trying not to kiss you already, she laughed, and the sound pushed some of the tension out of her shoulders. You'll get your chance. After dinner, they ate on the couch with plates balanced on their knees, watching the kind of old movie Kara loved, black and white, dramatic, full of longing stares and grand misunderstandings. Cameron didn't talk through it once. He just watched, occasionally glancing at her like he was cataloging every second they spent together. When the credits rolled and the plates were stacked in the sink, Kara turned toward him. You've seen every version of me now, she said. The girl in delivery sneakers, the girl with a half-broken toaster, the one who can't keep her basil plant alive. I've seen the real you, Cameron said, and I'm still here. She hesitated. Most people walk away when they see how messy it gets. I'm not most people, Kara leaned back, her eyes searching his face. Then tell me what you want. I want to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, Cameron said. I want to stop pretending this isn't the most certain I've felt about anything in years, she swallowed. That's a lot, I know. You're not scared, he looked at her like he'd already made his decision. I was. But then I realized something. What? I was more afraid of missing this. Kara didn't move for a moment. Then she reached over, touched his jaw, and kissed him slow and certain, like she was folding herself into something inevitable. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his lips, "Then don't miss it." They spent the night talking on the couch until the sky turned pale. Kara told him about her mother's quiet heartbreaks and how she still kept the last birthday card her father ever sent, even though she told everyone she threw it away. Cameron told her about the first time he realized money couldn't protect him from disappointment, and how he still sometimes woke up wondering who he'd be if he'd taken a different path. By morning, Kara's head rested on his shoulder and his arm was around her, fingers trailing absent-mindedly over her wrist. Do you ever think about the moment everything shifted? She asked. He tilted his head. You mean when you showed up on my doorstep looking lost and argumentative? She smiled against his chest. I wasn't argumentative. You tried to debate me on the definition of wrong address, Kara laughed. Okay, maybe a little. Cameron looked down at her, his voice suddenly low. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that tiny mistake was the best thing that ever happened to me. She sat up, her breath catching. You mean that? I do. There was a long pause, then she whispered, I love you. He didn't answer right away. He just touched her face like she was something fragile and fierce all at once. I've loved you since you handed me someone else's mail, he said. Later that week, he asked her to meet him at the same cove he'd shown her before. But this time, There was a path of lanterns leading down the staircase, and soft music playing from somewhere hidden along the rocks. Kara followed the lights until she saw him standing near the water, dressed in a dark sweater and holding something behind his back. "Is this fair?" she called. "You know I can't compete with this level of drama." He stepped forward and took her hands in his. "You've already won." Then he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a ring with a delicate gold band and a single sapphire deep blue, like the ocean behind him. "I don't care if it's fast or messy or completely insane. I just know I want my life to start and end with you in it. Marry me, Kara." She stared at the ring, then at him. The man who had once been a stranger with a towel and a grin was now the only thing in her world that made sense. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her as the tide rolled in behind them, pulling the world forward. And just like that, a wrong package had delivered her right where she was always meant to be. Cameron poured champagne into 2 slender flutes as Kara stood barefoot on the balcony of their new home, a penthouse nestled above the city skyline, all glass and light, glowing in the late evening sun. Her engagement ring caught the fading light, refracting a deep sapphire hue across her fingers as she leaned against the railing. He walked over and handed her a glass. "To irrational decisions that turn out to be the smartest ones." Kara took the glass, then looked up at him. "You know, I still haven't gotten used to the idea that this is my life now." Cameron leaned beside her, watching the city below. "It's ours, and you better start getting used to it because I have plans for you." She glanced at him. "What kind of plans?" "I thought we'd take a break before the wedding, just you and me, someplace quiet." "Define quiet," she said, narrowing her eyes. He sipped his drink. "Private island, no cell reception, 1 chef, 1 boat," she blinked. "That's your idea of quiet?" "I could tone it down to a villa in Tuscany with only 2 pools." Kara laughed, setting her glass down on the edge of the railing. "Honestly, I wouldn't care if it was a motel off the highway, as long as it's with you." He set his glass beside hers, then turned to her fully. "You're not afraid anymore, are you?" She shook her head slowly. "I was. I spent so long thinking I'd never be enough for someone like you. But you never made me feel like I had to be anything more than who I am." Cameron rested his hands on her waist. "That's because who you are is exactly what I didn't know I needed." Kara leaned into him, her voice quiet. "I've been thinking about something." "Should I be nervous?" "No," she said. "I've been thinking about going back to school, finishing my design degree. I gave up on it when things got complicated at home, but I miss it. I want to create again." He didn't hesitate. "Then you should." "I'd have to work part-time." "It'd be chaotic." "Then we'll build a life that makes room for chaos," he said. "I want you to live a life that feels like yours, not one you have to adjust to fit mine." Kara reached up and touched his face lightly, her thumb brushing just below his cheekbone. "You really mean that?" "I mean everything," he replied. "I'm not in love with an idea of you, Kara. I'm in love with you." She kissed him then, slow and sure, like she was placing a signature on a promise neither of them needed to speak aloud anymore. Later that night, they curled up on the oversized couch, a blanket tangled around their legs and a jazz record spinning low in the background. Kara rested her head on Cameron's chest, tracing idle circles along the fabric of his shirt. "Do you think your mother's ever going to accept me?" she asked, Cameron's fingers threaded through her hair. "She doesn't have to." "That's not exactly an answer." "She'll come around," he said. "Eventually, but even if she doesn't, it won't change a damn thing. I don't need her approval." "I need this, you and me." Kara tilted her head. "She sent me a card," his brow lifted. "What?" "Yesterday, it was in the mailbox, no return address, but it was her handwriting. She didn't say much. Just that she hoped I'd take care of you because you've never looked happier." Cameron exhaled slowly. "That's her version of a heartfelt speech. I didn't expect it, but it meant something." He kissed the top of her head. "You've already changed everything." The wedding was small by Foster standards. Just under 100 people, held at her restored greenhouse in the hills outside the city. The glass walls were draped with soft linen, and wildflowers covered every surface. Kara wore a gown she'd designed herself, elegant, simple, with just enough sparkle to catch the light when she moved. Cameron waited at the altar in a dark, tailored suit, his expression unreadable until she walked in. He didn't look away once. The vows were spoken in quiet tones, but every word landed like thunder between them. "I never expected you," Kara said as she held his hands, "but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You are not a fairy tale ending, you're the beginning of everything real." Cameron's voice didn't waver. "I searched the world for something to make me feel like I was home. Then you appeared, completely unexpected, and suddenly nothing else made sense. I promise you this, wherever you are, that's where I'll be." As the sun dipped below the hills and the sky turned to lavender and gold, they danced slowly beneath the hanging lights, laughter and music drifting through the night air. Later, in the quiet of their suite, Kara sat on the edge of the bed, toes digging into the plush carpet, her dress a pool of ivory around her. Cameron watched her from across the room, bow tie undone, shirt sleeves rolled up. "I never got to ask," she said, turning toward him. "What would you have done if I never knocked on your door that day?" He crossed the room, kneeling in front of her. "I would have found you anyway." "How? I don't know," he said, "but I think the universe would have shoved us together some other way. Maybe you'd have spilled coffee on me at a bookstore. Maybe we'd have reached for the same bottle of wine at the grocery store. It would have happened." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "Good. Because I don't want to imagine a world where it didn't." They fell asleep wrapped in each other, the city lights blinking far below, and for the first time in years, neither of them dreamed of anything else. Over the next year, Kara enrolled in classes and started building her portfolio from scratch. Cameron turned the guest room into a studio, complete with drafting tables and adjustable lighting. He never missed a presentation, and she never stopped showing up for him during long meetings and international calls and nights when the weight of his world threatened to press down. They didn't just love one another, they built something together. A life with rough edges and wild joy and deep, unshakable certainty. One evening, Kara came home with ink-stained fingers and a sketchbook full of ideas. Cameron was in the kitchen, barefoot and burning pasta. "You're not allowed near the stove anymore," she said, dropping her bag. "I was trying to surprise you." "You did. I'm surprised the building isn't on fire." He grinned, then pulled her close, arms winding around her waist. "You're glowing." "I got accepted into the design show," she said breathlessly. "The national one? That's incredible. I wanted you to be the first to know." "You always are," he said. They celebrated with takeout and champagne, sitting on the floor of their living room, surrounded by fabric swatches and sketches and the quiet hum of 1,000 shared memories. Years later, they'd look back at the moment a package went to the wrong house and realize it was never a mistake. It was the beginning of everything.